Well, now it's time to see a virtual application network in action. In this case, I have an environment including three clouds. One, it's a private cloud that is running on my laptop, so it won't have any external exposure, so nobody can connect actually to my local environment. Then we have an AKS cluster running on Azure. And finally, we have an Openshift cluster running on AWS. So in this case, we will start with the local machine and creating a namespace called local. So we create namespace local. First, that there's no pods running. And then initialize this namespace using the Skupper CLI in a cluster local mode. Now it's time to go with Azure. Let's create a namespace here called Azure. And then let's initialize it using the console with unsecure authentication. So we can provide a load balancer IP to access from external. Now with Openshift, we can create an AWS namespace and then initialize it using the Skupper CLI. In this case, it's running locally, so we need to update this to run from the local folder. So it's /Skupper. And now it initialized too. Okay. Now we can check the pods that are being deployed. And now we can see that there's a Skupper router and a Skupper service controller in my namespace. Let's then check the status. So currently Skupper is in local edge mode here, and it's not connected yet to any other system. So let's check the pods running on Azure. Again, we have the router, and then let's check the status, and it is available without connections. Time to check AWS with Openshift. We can check that there's the router pods running, and then we can check the status. It's available and ready to connect. Now for the connection, we need to get the service information, so we can view that the controller has an external IP, so we can select this IP running on port 80 or 80. So we can go to our browser and then use that IP address in the port 8080 to check the web console for Skupper. So this is the web console currently listing the services and some more information about our configuration. Let's now create the connection token for Azure. So this will create a secret with the information required to be able to connect to Skupper. It has the endpoint name and the secret. So let's download this file called Azure secret, and it's a YAML file. So we can download that from the AKS cluster. It can allow to download on our local system. So that's now in my local drive. So we can then take a look at the YAML file. Let's do a BI, Azure secret. And we can see there's a YAML version Kubernetes secret with information on how to get the connection to this cluster. So let's use this YAML file locally and then edit a file here in my local system. In this case, we will be doing again a BI with the Azure secret YAML file. We just paste this the content of the previous file with just a download. Let's insert all the content. Let's then save this file, and then we can do the connection. So it's gonna be Skupper connect, and then we just provide the YAML file with all the information. In this case, we're gonna name the connection name local to Azure. so we can identify this easily. And then hit enter, and then the configuration, it's ready to and connected, so we can check the status with Skupper CLI, and then we can see that it's connected to one other site, and there's no services exposed yet. Let's do the exact same thing in AWS in the Openshift cluster. So in this case, we will be creating the Azure secret. We're gonna be pasting the exact same content. The information is the same. We save the file, and then we can run Skupper connect with the name AWS to Azure as the connection name. Now we can check the Skupper status for the Openshift cluster. And then here we can see that now this cluster is connected to two other sites, and one of those sites it's indirectly connected through the Azure site. So let's see on the console how we can now take a look at these three clouds, these three Kubernetes clusters that are running on my environment. So we can see the AWS cluster and the local and the AWS connected to Azure, and they are all bridged together. So let's go back to the local environment and create a deployment. It's going to be a backend service that is going to be just replying to hello world. This is created in two sites. We're going to create that in the local and also in the Openshift site. So we also create a deployment here, and then we have both pods available for high availability. In the local, we have the backend pod, and also in the Openshift cluster, we have the hello world backend pod running. Now it's time to deploy the front end. See, there's no pods running and on Azure. Let's create the front end deployment. This is going to be the only pod running on the Azure cloud. So there's only the hello world front end. There's no other pods running here besides the router. So it's time to check the services. Again, there's only the Skupper services available. And now let's start to expose using Skupper the deployment of the backend as part of the Skupper services. On the Openshift service 2, expose the deployment. And now this will create the services around all the clouds to be available. So let's see in the local, the service it's already created. So it's hello world backend, this service cluster. Also, again, on the Openshift, there's a hello world backend service created. And now this same service should be available. If we can see the list of exposed services, we know that there's the hello world backend service and the application listening. On the Azure cloud, we can take a look now on the services here, and we can see that there's the hello world backend service being created also in the Azure cloud. So we have the service all the three clouds, but there's no pod running here. It's just the front end. So we have the service, it's virtualized service. It's time to expose the deployment of the hello world front end. The port 8080, and then the type will be load balancer. Okay, this creates the service for the deployment. So if we see now the services, we see that there's the backend service and the front end service. The front end service has a cluster, an external IP address, so we can use that to access the front end service. That is just a simple GET call. We can go to our browser. We type in the external IP address, port 8080, and then we can see that it loads the application. Let's do it a little bit bigger so we can see that it's just a single message. showing the name of the pod that is currently answering this request. So if we do a refresh, we can see that there's also a counter and information about the pod name. So let's see which one it's answering. So in the local cluster, we can get the pods. We can see that the pod name corresponds to the pod name being shown by the application. So in this case, the front-end application, it's been tunneled through Skupper to the local cluster in my laptop running, and then being able to access that service. If we go to the console, we can see that the destination of the site, it's my local cluster. So it's the cluster that it's currently answering those requests, and how is it flowing. To check the high availability, let's scale the deployment, hello world backend, and then put the replicas on 0. So we can simulate a shortage in the system. So this will scale down the service. We can try calling the application again. It will respond until the pod it's terminated. In the moment that the pod is terminated, then the application will automatically reroute from the local cluster where it's not available to the Openshift cluster. Now we can see there's a new pod answering back, and we saw the update in the screen. So let's just verify that it's the exact pod that is running. So we get pods, and yeah, the name is exactly the same as the pod that it's currently running in the Openshift cluster. So from Azure, it's now calling the AWS service cluster. And let's get back the local service, and let's do a failback. Let's restart and check that it's still answering on the Openshift cluster, and we can see it's still that one answering back. And then let's scale back the service running on top of Openshift. So let's scale deployment, hello world backend, replicas equals 0. And now that there's no pod running on Openshift, we should be falling back again to the local cluster running on my laptop, and here it is. Now the cluster that is answering black, it's my own laptop. Amazing, right?